You've been through some changes here at Cisco. And the industry has been changing too. How is the data center networking requirements changing over time with the emergence of IoT and edge computing and new applications like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we look at the last, call it 5 to 7 years of how ultimately end users and our customers have been changing their business models and changing how they use networks, it's had a profound impact on the data center. You mentioned a couple of the big ones that are happening right now, but even before that, as you know, the explosion of mobile devices, now new IoT devices, it creates a tremendous, it changes the traffic patterns and it changes the applications being used as well. And so ultimately in the data center, the way it manifests itself, all of those devices are touching some kind of application that eventually hits a data center that one of our customers own, whether that's a physical data center or a logical place in the cloud. And so that explosion adds a ton of complexity, it adds a ton of new endpoints and a ton of new applications that also change the traffic pattern. So you know, the traffic patterns are now more east-west as opposed to north-south within a data center. The number of, the scale of those applications have to change dramatically because as you have more endpoints, more IoT devices connecting back to it, 5G will have the same effect. It changes the scale and the flexibility you have to build data centers. And in general, it just makes it a much more dynamic environment.
Okay, you mentioned 5G. How are we going to see 5G changing in particular? How is that going to change the data center requirement?
So it'll have two big effects, actually. One, as the service providers who are delivering these services, it'll change their environments and their networks. So rather than being kind of transport from the edge back to a central core, they'll build out what is essentially small data centers in a distributed fashion in their entire network. And so that's one big profound change, and that also changes, of course, how the networks are designed and configured and then the sheer scale of those data centers. I think the second thing is that it'll enable a whole new host of applications that we maybe don't even, can't even dream of today. And with that wave of applications, I'm sure we're going to see, again, a change in the requirements of how the underlying infrastructure works.
Yeah, that's kind of a truism of emerging technologies.
Of course.
First it does the old thing better or cheaper.
Yeah.
Maybe not both. Maybe worse and cheaper. But then after that, you start seeing the new. You have to have email replacing faxes before you get to Uber.
Right.
So you came out of Insieme.
Insieme, yes.
Insieme, yes. Tell us about, maybe people don't even remember, because it was 1,000 years ago in network time. Tell us about that transition.
Yeah, so Insieme Networks was a startup that Cisco invested in and eventually brought into the fold. It was Cisco's entry into software-defined networking, and the principal products that came out of that were ACI, which is our software-defined networking offer in the data center, and the Nexus 9K, which is our flagship data center product. I think it was a great experience for all of us who were involved in it. It gave us an opportunity to work with obviously some great people, but also become part of the data center group at Cisco and be able to bring this technology at scale to the market. So it's been a great ride. Yeah,
I mean the change that I perceive, and you can check me if I'm wrong on this, was that back in those days, software-defined networking was controversial, and now it's the way it's done by you and your competitors, by everyone.
Yeah. I think at the time, you know, software-defined networking, and this is going back 6-7 years at this point, but at the time, software-defined networking was this interesting technology in search of a problem, really. It was, you know, makes sense. You want to abstract the network a little bit more, make it more flexible, make it more programmable, but you know, ultimately, and I think this is what we changed about it within Insieme and Cisco, is that ultimately the reason that you have a data center is because you have, or a presence in the cloud, is because you have some application that you care about. It's not about building, you know, networking infrastructure or compute infrastructure. It's that application that you care about. And so when we thought about ACI, we really kind of thought about it in that manner. You need to think about, give the users a way to control the infrastructure so that you can define the infrastructure by the requirements of the application and not the other way around. And so I think that was one of the key things that we brought along with the technology, of course, was that approach that it's top down and everything is in service of that application that the customers want.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.